Well, it wasn't just Harry being interviewed. Last week, Meghan also appeared in an interview situation on a podcast. The podcast was called the Jamie Kern Lima Show. And before we get into what was said, I'll take a look and a listen for yourself.
The things with parenting, you watch as you're building their confidence and their self-esteem. A word that I use a lot with them is yet, and how to reframe things for kids when they're like, I can't do it. I can't do it yet. No, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough yet. And the more that you put into practice these ideas of like, put yet at the end of nearly every sentence, and you feel like there's still hope and a promise that you can do it.
Yes.
But when I type that to my children before I go to bed, guess what? Like, I'm teaching that to them, or I'm reinforcing that, but I'm also reinforcing it for myself.
Yes.
Like, I don't know yet. I'm not sure.
I was just going to say that applies to every adult. That applies to me right now, all of us.
Yeah.
Yet.
I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Now, I will talk to you about that parenting tip, just not yet. First things first. Were you surprised that this was the show that she decided to sit down for an hour and a half and agree to answer pretty much anything?
Well, no, because they're friends, aren't they? Meghan and Jamie are friends, and they made that quite clear at the beginning that they've been friends for a long time.
It's a point they labour across the show, yeah.
They do. So there's trust there, absolutely. And also, Meghan had Jamie on her podcast, so there's cross-pollination, and they can, use the PR for each other. So I'm not surprised that this is the podcast that she chose to go on. She feels comfortable. They weren't wearing any makeup. That they told us that as well. And, Meghan hadn't seen the questions beforehand. They made sure that we knew that as well.
But then those questions were not really the big revelatory stuff that you might expect behind a disclaimer like that. It was things like, what's your morning routine?
Yeah, it was all very, I guess, surface level. We didn't get any big revelations, but what would they be, really? And I think it was just more digging into, who are you, Meghan? What's your everyday life? Tell us about your relationship with Harry. Meghan talking about how they're in their honeymoon period now, that they've been in the trenches before. I think she was referring
didn't really get into that.
No, but I don't think that's really the MO of Jamie's podcast. I think it's more, we're friends, let's talk about our lives, and it's about them being very comfortable together, and therefore making Meghan comfortable and comfortable enough to share. And I think that's what came across in this.
I mean, it was basically a buy one, get one free deal, wasn't it? Because she did Jamie's podcast and then Jamie did her podcast.
As is often the way in the podcast world. I mean, that's
you scratch my back, I'll do yours. But they came out a day apart.
Yeah, but what it does is it enables people to discover your podcast. It's very hard to discover podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a handful of tiles on the home pages of all of the platforms. So that's a pretty standard practice. It ran long. It ran like a TV show, full of ads.
Yeah.
Full of,
very long ads.
Lots of words, salady type. You got this, female empowerment, all great stuff. But where was the real talk for you, Russ?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I thought it was vacuous in the extreme. Maybe she should have known the questions beforehand and it would have had a bit of structure. And I think Jamie Kern Lima, on paper, should have been a really impressive person. I mean, she sold her business to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion. That is impressive. I would have been absolutely fascinated to hear about
her story that she tells in Meghan's podcast is absolutely fascinating, on the brink of bankruptcy and finally getting that
Arguably,
deal.
Meghan shaped and structured her interview
a lot better.
Yes,
she did.
I don't think I don't think language like, we were in the trenches as the anniversary of V-Day is approaching, and Harry's interview. This is just really bad PR for me, and I don't think you should use language like that. They did have a tough time. Their experience was their experience, but in the trenches when you're multi-millionaires and you're living in a beautiful place in Montecito, and you had everything afforded to you from the royal family is pretty beyond the pale for me.
Were you surprised to read, Russ, that she now says she no longer reads any media about herself, that very little is brought to her, and if it is, it's just to say, I think this journalist, for example, might be trying to land this story well for you?
Yes, I think that Meghan has said, don't read anything. She previously said when she was in the royal family, I don't read anything, I don't look at the press. That's not.
But how do you fight privacy claims, for example, if you're Harry, and not read it, Because
Well,
you
Harry
have
does.
to,
He
because
reads
that's
everything. He reads the
reads
comments
it.
under every story, you know.
You'd be talking about this stuff over dinner, wouldn't you? Or just lying in bed on your phone, you know. We know that Harry is absolutely consumed with everything that's written about him in the media. For Meghan to say that she doesn't look at it, I think that's a bit disappointing.
For me, it's akin to the comment that she didn't know anything about Prince Harry and she hadn't looked up his family before she met them. I don't buy it.
I buy it because there's so much hate written about her. Like, there's literally an industry...
I mean, I wouldn't look if I was her.
Exactly, I wouldn't. There's an industry of hate that's built around talking about her. I wouldn't read anything. I absolutely would.
It's a self-preservation.
Yeah,
it's a mechanism.
absolutely. It's so damaging for your mental health. So I believe it when she says she doesn't read anything about her because so much of it's so hateful. I wouldn't.
But I think there's, because of some of the legal disputes that are ongoing, I think there's stuff that they're going to have to read. Because
She did say that sometimes she'll get a text message from a friend that's, you know, are you okay? And she thinks, oh, okay, what is it?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I be okay? And that's when she'll start to hear about stories.
I mean, it makes sense to protect yourself from that. It kind of feels a
Definitely.
bit like unnecessary self-harm, inflicting unkind comments about you from people that you'll never know or meet.
Exactly, and you wouldn't go looking for it. And as my mum always says, other people's opinions of me are none of my business.
Exactly. But, you know, when you're talking
That's
about...
easy for us to say, though.
Yeah.
When she's talking on this podcast about, you know, I work so hard and I'm, you know, up all the time. I'm just, everything's so hard for me. Like, just have a bit of introspection. That's all that people are asking for. I think they're just... Meghan's trying to create this narrative where, you know, they're just absolute victims in all of this and just, you know, just get on with life. Surely it's, you know, not that hard. I don't think they're doing themselves any favours.
Are you saying it was lacking self-awareness for you, Russ?
I don't think they have any self-awareness. I think we've seen that in spades over the last few months, haven't we?
Would you concur?
I mean, I think she... you know, when she talks about... She creates this picture of this idyllic life. She talks about her and Harry being in the honeymoon period and they've got this beautiful life they've made for themselves and this beautiful children. I mean, that's very different to the message we get from Harry in the BBC interview where, you know, he's painting a very different picture to, you know, how tough things are for him. Yes, they have created a beautiful life. They do have beautiful children. But even when she's doing that, she talks about the emails that she sends every night to her children and that she's got an email address for them. And then when
This
they're
is part
18,
of the parenting tip that she shared, which is, so every night, you know, despite the long hours and the hard working across the day, she's still got the time, she says, to get into bed at night and send her kids an email that will kind of create a body of work, a body of memories, so that she can feel sated in that her kids know one day how loved they are.
And I can see where this comes from. For Harry, having lost his mother at such an early age, imagine if he had that from his mother to go through. And I think it's, you know, it's a very beautiful thing to do, but is it realistic as, you know, a working mother who's got umpteen different demands on her time?
I would have been more inclined to think, oh, actually, what a great idea if she just said, once a month, once a couple of weeks, I'll just drop something down and do a little roundup. Yeah. You know, that feels more attainable, but to do it every day.
It's this creation of perfection, I think. You know, the Netflix series was perfection. It was all, you know, doing the cooking while you're wearing a $1,000 jumper or whatever. You know, people like, you know, what's the realism in all of this?
But
what's the authenticity?
Is it a creation of perfection, or is this... I think people find it hard to believe that this is just who she is, how she is. We may not get it, we may not understand it, but...
Is it, though? Is it? I think that's what people have a problem with. Is
the thing is that why is there so much scrutiny on, is she being who she is? She's giving us her genuine, authentic self. I don't know why we have such a problem with believing that. It's almost like we are sitting here saying, how dare she be this person? This is not who we've painted her out to be. So therefore, we've decided that everything she's doing is a lie. It's like we're almost saying the audacity of this person to send her kids emails, to say that she's hardworking, to cook in a white shirt, to have a Netflix show, to wear those jeans. Like, imagine that this is just who she is and let her be that. I just can't get my head around the sort of narrative that she has to be lying because this is not who you expect.
It's not
I
that
don't think
she's
she's lying. I
lying.
think she's.
I don't think anybody's accusing her of lying.
Is this vision of perfection?
But it's not a vision of perfection. She's just being who she is. If to you that's perfect, but that's your vision of it. That's your interpretation of it.
I think it's a presentation, or which
I suppose
doesn't.
The point of them wearing
fact.
they kind of say they're dressed in their cozies and they've got no makeup on is trying to illustrate that, isn't it? That, you know, it's not perfection. We're not all glamorous all the time. This is how I go round to my friends' houses and we sit in these rocking chairs and this is how we have the conversation. I think it's just labouring those points too much because we hear about that repeatedly during this hour and a half conversation. And, you know, they feel to me the guests that she has, that the podcast she chooses to do, they are all very carefully chosen people who are going to make Meghan look good, people who are going to tell her what an amazing person she is.
But nobody would put,
they're
in
all
her defence,
friends.
nobody's going to put together a podcast series where you, as the host, the name that carries it, it's designed to make you look bad. You know, that's just bad business, right? Of course you would do that, wouldn't you?
But they're all friends, aren't they? And so there's part of me that feels that I'm kind of looking at this little Montecito club and we're occasionally allowed a little ear in on the conversations and then we're out again. And, you know, one of the things about a podcast is you've got to draw your audience in. You can't close them out. And I think there's one reference in, oh, that was a conversation we had earlier. And so I slightly feel that, you know, and there's a lot of fawning and kind of, you know, it's all bigging each other up. Now, I'm not against that. That's wonderful. But does it feel genuine and real? I don't know.
So maybe it is a sort of Californication of,
yeah, maybe it's a
that the
culture,
Brits don't like or they don't
thing.
identify with.
I definitely think there's a Californication there. 100% agree with you on that. It's very California. It's very American. But I genuinely just think that's how they are.
It would be very difficult to imagine, for example, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, delivering, you know, that kind of the self-belief pitches that came with, for example, the whole yet thing. Like, you know, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to teach my kids that, you know, whatever, however that landed. It's very difficult to imagine that coming from a member of the senior royal family.
Someone British. My mother-in-law is American, and I always sort of half stand off of how positive she is all the time. It's a joke between us, as you know. I didn't grow up in that sort of environment. We're, you know, that's not necessarily stiff upper lip, but a bit more brutish perhaps to our younger children. But it is very, very positive. Maybe it's just not very British.
But actually, is there anything wrong in that?
No, I'm not saying anything wrong with it.
As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's friends are family to them now because they are estranged from most of their family. Friends are family, and there is this sort of network that they are all rallying around and supporting each other.
Yeah,
that's what we're seeing.
Show referring to the hair and makeup team as Uncle this and Aunt that. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Some comfort for palace officials would be the fact that she seemed to talk down the idea of a memoir. Definitely interested in writing another book, she says, but probably not yet on a memoir. Hasn't lived quite enough life.
Yeah, I think I could see her doing a cookbook, right?
Yeah,
to go
lifestyle
along with
book.
it. Yeah, I think that would make sense. So like a coffee table book or something like that. Something that would go along with Love Meghan, that would be in that vein, that would be about hosting, entertaining. And I think that's what I could absolutely see and that
the
would
series
work
was
for her.
visually stunning,
Yeah, it
wasn't
was.
You can
Yeah.
see that
Yeah.
sitting on your coffee table.
Yeah, so I could see her going down that route rather than a memoir. So I don't think that's anything that anybody needs to worry about. But I could see a nice With Love Meghan coffee table book coming.